Hey, Craig, we really saw record numbers of voters come out to do early voting. 9 days of early voting wrapped up just yesterday, and now all three candidates making their final push to get the word out, to get voters to the polls on the last day possible, which is Tuesday, Election Day. The numbers show New Yorkers are turning out to voice their choice for New York City's 111th mayor. After 9 days of early voting, more than 735,000 people cast their ballot. That's more than 4 times the last mayoral race, according to the New York City Board of Elections. The three candidates zigzagging the 5 boroughs to make their last-minute push. Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani in Harlem.
And the reason you will find me speaking to New Yorkers at 2 in the morning or at 9 in the morning is that we want to make sure we speak to everyone we can before polls close at 9 p.m.
Independent Andrew Cuomo in the Bronx.
We have the momentum. People understand the issues now. They're focused. They're coming out. And we're going to win.
Republican Curtis Sliwa in Brooklyn.
They didn't want our voices heard. No, they didn't. In 2021. When I warned everybody that Eric Adams would be corrupt and there would be chaos.
Let's look at the latest Pix 11 Emerson College The Hill poll showing 34-year-old Mamdani holding a strong lead at 50%, 67-year-old Cuomo trailing by half that, and 71-year-old Sliwa not far behind Cuomo at 21%.
Okay, so the first major elections since Trump got back into the White House just happened, and holy crap, the results are in. And they're bad, like really bad for Republicans. I'm talking historically bad. Democrats just swept key races in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City. And not just one, they crushed it. Flipped seats, broke turnout records, built margins that nobody saw coming. And the GOP, they're in full panic mode right now. And Trump, oh man, Trump is losing his mind. He's on Truth Social, claiming the entire thing is rigged, attacking mail-in ballots, demanding criminal investigations, the whole playbook. And yeah, this is wild because this isn't some random local election. This is the first real test of Trump's power since he came back, and it just collapsed. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
And if our polling is correct, Zohran Mamdani would be the youngest mayor elected into office in a century. Andrew Cuomo has been stumping, saying that age is linked to his inexperience. We'll have to see how voters feel. That's Tuesday, tomorrow, Election Day, where polls open at 6 a.m. We're live outside City Hall in Kalorama, Pix 11 News.
So let's talk about what actually happened here, because the media is spinning this 10 different ways. Some outlets are saying it's a fluke. Others are calling it a total repudiation of Trump. And honestly, the truth is somewhere in the middle, but way closer to the second one. Here's the bottom line. Democrats won races they weren't supposed to win. They turned out voters in numbers that Republicans didn't think were possible. And they did it by focusing on mail-in voting, early voting, and ground game organization. All the things Trump has been attacking for years. In Clark County, Nevada, which is basically Las Vegas, Democrats built an early vote firewall bigger than what Obama had in 2012. Let that sink in. Bigger than Obama, in a state Trump thought he had locked down. New voters, young voters, turning out in droves. In Virginia, Democrats flipped the state legislature even harder than expected. In New Jersey, they held every single competitive seat. In New York City, progressive candidates won across the board, and in every single case, the story was the same. High turnout, mail-in ballots, early voting. Democrats organized, Republicans didn't, and now the fallout is immediate. GOP officials are stunned. Some are pointing fingers at Trump. Others are demanding new voter restrictions. And Trump himself, he's calling the entire voting process fraudulent. Again. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down exactly what happened in these elections, why it matters so much, what Trump's response tells us, and what this means for the next 2 years. Because yeah, this changes everything. Because here's the thing. This wasn't supposed to happen. Trump just got back into office. The GOP controls Congress. They have momentum. They have the White House. And yet they just got steamrolled in the first real election since he took power. That's not normal. That's not a fluke. That's a message. And the message is pretty clear. Voters are already turning against Trump, and it's happening faster than anyone predicted. Now, some of you might be thinking, come on, it's just a few local races. It doesn't mean anything. And okay, I get that, but here's why you're wrong. These weren't just local races. These were test runs, early indicators. the first data point showing us what 2026 is going to look like. And if this pattern holds, the midterms are going to be a bloodbath for Republicans. Political analysts on CNN and The Hill are calling this cataclysmic for the GOP. That's not me being dramatic. That's their word, cataclysmic. And when you look at the numbers, yeah, that tracks. Because the real story here isn't just that Democrats won, it's how they won. It's the margin. It's the turnout. It's the fact that Republicans didn't see it coming. And it's Trump's reaction, which tells you everything you need to know about where his head is at right now. He's not pivoting. He's not adjusting strategy. He's doubling down. He's attacking the voting system itself. And that's going to make things worse for him, because voters don't want to hear that their votes don't count. They want results. They want action. And right now, Trump's giving them excuses. So stick with me here, because we're about to dive deep into what actually happened, the real numbers, the real stakes, and why this moment might be the beginning of the end for Trump's second term before it even really gets started. And look, I know some of you are probably tired of hearing about Trump. I get it. But this story, this one matters, because it's not just about Trump being Trump. It's about what happens when voters actually show up and reject his agenda. It's about whether democracy can push back against authoritarianism. It's about whether facts and organization can beat lies and chaos. And based on what just happened, the answer might actually be yes. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the numbers, the strategy, the panic, and yeah, the absolutely unhinged meltdown happening in Trump world right now. Because trust me, it's even worse than you think. Alright, so let's talk about what actually went down on election night, because the details here are insane, and they tell us way more than just who won and who lost. They tell us about strategy, about messaging, about where American politics is heading, and yeah, about how badly Trump and the GOP miscalculated. First, Virginia, Democrats flipped control of key legislative seats and crushed expectations. They focused on abortion rights, healthcare, and voting access, and it worked. Turnout in urban areas like Richmond and Northern Virginia was off the charts. Young voters showed up, women showed up, and they voted blue down the ballot. Now here's the kicker. Republicans thought they had Virginia in the bag. They spent millions, they brought in big name endorsements, Trump himself did rally events, and it didn't matter. Democrats out-organized them, door-to-door, text messages, early voting pushes. They did the work, and it paid off. In New Jersey, same story. Democrats held every competitive seat. Republicans tried to flip districts in suburban areas. They ran on crime. They ran on taxes. Classic GOP playbook. And voters said no thanks. They stuck with Democrats. And again, the margin wasn't close. It was decisive. And then there's New York City, where progressive candidates won across the board. We're talking about races where the left wing of the Democratic Party went up against moderates and establishment picks and won. That tells you something about where the energy is right now. It's not in the center, it's on the left, and voters are responding to bold progressive messaging. But here's where it gets really interesting. Clark County, Nevada, Las Vegas, and the surrounding area. This is a bellwether. This is where elections are won and lost in Nevada, and Democrats built an early voting firewall there that was bigger than what Obama had in 2012. Let me say that again, bigger than Obama in 2012. That's not just good, that's historic. How did they do it? Mail-in ballots, early voting, mobilizing new voters, young people, Latino voters, working class families. Democrats made it easy to vote. They pushed absentee ballots. They set up drop boxes. They organized rides to polling places, and it worked. Now contrast that with what Republicans did, or more accurately, what they didn't do. The GOP has spent years attacking mail-in voting. Trump has called it fraudulent. Republican state legislatures have tried to restrict it, and voters noticed. Because when you spend all your time telling people that voting by mail is risky or corrupt or unreliable, guess what happens? Your own voters don't do it, and you lose. That's literally what happened here. Republicans didn't invest in mail-in ballot programs. They didn't organize early voting pushes. They relied on election day turnout, and when election day came, it wasn't enough. Democrats had already built an insurmountable lead. So let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets wild. In Clark County, Democrats had a lead of tens of thousands of votes before election day even started. In Virginia, early voting numbers showed Democrats turning out at rates that were 20 to 30% higher than Republicans in key districts. In New Jersey, mail-in ballots broke for Democrats by huge margins in suburban counties that used to be swing areas. This is a pattern, and it's not an accident. Democrats learned from 2020. They learned how to win with mail-in ballots. They learned how to organize around early voting, and they've perfected it. Meanwhile, Republicans have spent the last few years trying to delegitimize those same methods, and now they're paying the price. And Trump's response? Oh man. So Trump goes on Truth Social the night of the election and posts, and I'm paraphrasing here, the entire process, especially the voting itself, is rigged. All caps, classic Trump. He's attacking universal mail-in voting. He's calling for a serious legal and criminal review of how votes were counted, and he's blaming Democrats for manipulating the system. Now let's be clear. There is zero evidence of fraud. None. Election officials in every state said the process was clean, votes were counted correctly, the results are legitimate. But Trump doesn't care. He's pushing the same narrative he's been pushing for years, and his base is eating it up. But here's the problem. That narrative doesn't win elections. It fires up the core MAGA crowd, sure, but it doesn't expand the Republican coalition. It doesn't bring in moderates. It doesn't appeal to suburban women or young voters or independents. It just makes Republicans look like sore losers, and that's not a winning strategy. GOP officials are starting to realize this. You're seeing cracks in the party. Some Republican strategists are quietly saying Trump's obsession with election fraud is killing them, that it's distracting from real issues, that it's making them look unhinged, and they're right. But Trump's not listening. He's doubling down. He's demanding new voter restrictions. He's talking about federal laws to ban mail-in voting. He's threatening to investigate Democratic election officials. And all of that is just going to make things worse because voters see through it. They know what he's doing, and they don't like it. Now let's zoom out for a second. Why does this matter? Why should anyone care about a few state-level races? Here's why. These elections are a preview. They're showing us what 2026 is going to look like. And if Democrats can replicate this performance in the midterms, Republicans are in serious trouble. We're talking about losing the House, losing more Senate seats, losing governorships, a total collapse. And it's not just about losing seats, it's about losing control of the narrative. Right now, Democrats are winning the argument on voting rights. They're winning the argument on who's actually trying to help working people. And they're winning the argument on who's focused on real problems versus who's focused on conspiracy theories. Trump's reaction to these election results tells you everything. He's not talking about policy. He's not talking about the economy or healthcare or immigration. He's talking about rigged elections. He's talking about fraud. He's stuck in 2020 and voters have moved on. There's also this. Political analysts are saying this is the worst GOP showing in decades for this type of off-cycle election. Decades. That's not hyperbole. These are historically bad results. And the excuse that Trump and Republicans are giving, that it's all about rigged voting, that's not going to fly with most Americans because most Americans don't believe that. Most Americans think elections are fair, and when you keep telling them they're not, you sound crazy. So here's where we are. Democrats just proved they can win, they can organize, they can turn out voters, and they can do it in Trump's America. Meanwhile, Republicans are in full panic mode. They're pointing fingers, they're demanding changes, and they're watching their leader melt down on social media. And the craziest part? This is just the beginning. We've got 2 years until the midterms, 2 years of this, 2 years of Trump claiming everything is rigged, 2 years of Democrats organizing and building momentum, 2 years of the GOP tearing itself apart. Can you believe this? Like, this is wild, and it's only going to get wilder. There's something else happening here too, something deeper. Trump built his entire political identity on winning, on being a winner, on never losing. And now he's losing, and he doesn't know how to handle it. So instead of adapting, instead of learning, instead of changing his approach, he's just claiming the game is rigged. And that's the behavior of someone who's scared, someone who knows their power is slipping away. Okay, so let's break this down. Let's talk about what this actually means. Because we've covered what happened, now we need to talk about why it matters and what comes next. And yeah, buckle up, because the implications here are huge. Point number 1, Trump's hold on the GOP is weakening, and it's happening faster than anyone thought. Look, when Trump came back into office, everyone assumed he'd have total control, that Republicans would fall in line, that he'd dominate the party for the next 4 years. And maybe that was true for a minute, but these election results, they're changing the calculus. Because here's the thing, Republicans are starting to ask themselves a very dangerous question. Is Trump actually helping us win, or is he the reason we're losing? And after last night, a lot of them are leaning toward the second answer. You're already seeing it. GOP strategists going on background to reporters saying Trump's election fraud obsession is killing them. Republican donors quietly saying they need a new direction. State-level officials distancing themselves from Trump's rhetoric. Now, will that turn into an actual rebellion? Probably not. Republicans are terrified of crossing Trump. They know his base will destroy them in primaries, but the seeds of doubt are there. And if Democrats keep winning like this, those seeds are going to grow. And here's what makes this even more dangerous for Trump. He doesn't have another election to run. This is his second term. He's done after this. So the loyalty that Republicans showed him when they thought he could help them win again, that's evaporating. They're starting to think about their own futures, about 2026, about 2028, and Trump's not part of that equation anymore. Point number 2, voting rights is the defining issue of the next 2 years, period. Democrats just showed that when you make it easier to vote, They win, and Republicans know it. That's why Trump is already calling for restrictions. That's why GOP state legislatures are going to push new laws limiting mail-in voting and early voting. That's why this is about to become the biggest fight in American politics. And here's the stakes. If Republicans succeed in restricting voting access, they can claw back some of these losses. They can make it harder for Democrats to organize. They can suppress turnout in key demographics. But if Democrats can hold the line, if they can protect voting rights and expand access, then 2026 is going to be a wave election, and 2028 after that. So watch this space, because every state legislature fight over voting laws, that's going to matter. Every court case, that's going to matter. Every voter registration drive, that's going to matter. This is the battleground now. And the thing is, Republicans are walking into a trap here, because the more they talk about restricting voting, the more they energize Democratic voters. The more they try to make it harder to vote, the more they look like they're afraid of democracy, and that's not a good look, especially with younger voters who are already skeptical of the GOP. Point number 3. Trump's economic and legislative agenda is in trouble. And yeah, I know that's not what this election was technically about, but here's the connection. Trump came back into office promising to deliver for working people, promising to fix the economy, promising to get things done, and instead, he spent the last few months focused on government shutdowns and fighting with his own party and posting conspiracy theories on social media, and voters noticed. These election results are a backlash. They're voters saying, hey, we didn't vote for this, we voted for results, and you're not delivering. Now Trump's got even less political capital, his approval rating is already shaky, and if he keeps losing elections, Republicans in Congress are going to stop listening to him. They're going to start thinking about their own survival, and that means gridlock. That means nothing gets done. That means Trump becomes a lame duck president in year 1 of his second term. Think about that for a second. A lame duck president in year 1. That's almost unprecedented, and it's entirely self-inflicted because Trump can't stop focusing on his own grievances long enough to actually govern. Point number 4. Democrats are energized, and that's maybe the most important thing here, because for the last few months, there's been this narrative that Democrats were demoralized, that they were divided, that they didn't know how to fight back against Trump, and last night proved that narrative was wrong. Democrats have a strategy, they have energy, they have grassroots organizing, and they have something Republicans don't have right now, a clear message. Democrats are running on protecting democracy, protecting voting rights, protecting abortion access, protecting healthcare, and it's working. Voters are responding to that. Meanwhile, what's the Republican message? That elections are rigged. That's not a message, that's an excuse, and voters see through it. So here's what's going to happen next. Democrats are going to take this momentum into 2026. They're going to invest in organizing. They're going to recruit strong candidates. They're going to run on the same issues that just won them these races. And if they execute, they're going to take back the House, maybe even expand their position in the Senate, depending on the map. And Republicans, they're going to keep fighting each other. They're going to keep arguing about whether to stick with Trump or move on. They're going to keep trying to restrict voting instead of expanding their appeal, and they're going to keep losing. Now, is that guaranteed? No, nothing in politics is guaranteed. Republicans could get their act together, Trump could pivot and start focusing on real issues, the economy could tank, and voters could blame Democrats, a million things could change, but right now, in this moment, Democrats have all the momentum and Republicans are in total disarray. And Trump's response is making it worse. Every time he posts about rigged elections, he alienates moderate voters. Every time he attacks mail-in voting, he suppresses his own base's turnout. Every time he demands investigations and restrictions, he hands Democrats a winning issue. He's his own worst enemy right now, and he doesn't even realize it. So let's talk about what this means for you, for regular people watching this. Because yeah, this is about politics and elections and Trump's ego, but it's also about real stuff, about whether your vote is going to count, about whether the government is going to function, about whether we're going to spend the next 2 years fighting about conspiracy theories or actually trying to solve problems. And based on what just happened, we're probably going to get more of the former, more fighting, more chaos, more Trump claiming everything is rigged, and less actual governance. But here's the good news. Voters are paying attention. They're showing up. They're making their voices heard. And when they do that, change happens. Democrats just proved it. They organized, they turned out voters, and they won. That's democracy working, even when one side is trying to undermine it. So yeah, these election results are a big deal. They're a warning sign for Trump. They're a turning point for the GOP, and they're a preview of what's coming in 2026. The question now is whether anyone is actually going to learn from it, or whether we're just going to do this same dance over and over until something breaks. My guess? Probably the second one, because Trump doesn't learn, Republicans don't pivot, they just keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. And that's the definition of insanity. But hey, at least it makes for good content. So I guess there's that. And look, there's one more thing I want to say here. because I think it's important. These election results, they show that organizing matters, that showing up matters, that doing the work matters. Democrats didn't win because they had better candidates or more money or some magic strategy. They won because they put in the effort. They knocked on doors, they made phone calls, they helped people register to vote, they gave people rides to the polls. That's not sexy, that's not exciting, but it works. And it's a reminder that democracy isn't just about showing up on election day and complaining when things don't go your way. It's about putting in the work every single day. And right now, Democrats are doing that work and Republicans aren't. All right, that's it for today. This story is still developing. Trump's going to keep melting down. Republicans are going to keep panicking. Democrats are going to keep organizing, and we're going to cover all of it. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're paying attention, because this is just the beginning. And honestly, I can't wait to see what happens next, because if this is what the first major election of Trump's second term looks like, the next 2 years are going to be absolutely wild. We're talking about constant battles over voting rights, more election denialism, more GOP infighting, and probably more Democratic victories if they can keep this momentum going. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the drama is just getting started. Catch you in the next one.